Ta-da! And welcome to Joseph's Model Railway and Toy Room. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me in this very special part 2 on building a mimic panel. My single greatest regret on this layout today. As always, we better get through with a bit of housekeeping. You don't need to like, follow, or subscribe. Just put some videos out there where I can. Have a holly jolly great time doing so. Now, we do welcome you back to my single biggest regret on this layout, which is building this mimic panel, which has been not how I intended it at all. Astrol Boy, the legendary 80s cartoon that I grew up with. This episode, the runaway subway train, I forgot to mention in part 1, but this was my inspiration toward mimic panels, and I know that with the higher end block occupancy detection systems, you can have what we're seeing here. I just thought it was a wonderful display. Those points, the way they move, may seem futuristic, but actually, if you take the high-speed train in Japan, the couplings actually open up from a compartment in the front. So, futuristic indeed. Boxes filled with DCC Concepts Next Retirement Fund is all thanks to me. I'm not going to lie to you. It's not all bad. Some of what is in those boxes is regarding ground signals, which is going to be coming up in a future video as well. And that has been, for the most part, an absolute success I can't wait to be talking to you about. But of course, we've been busy building a mimic panel. And if you haven't seen part 1, there's a link to it somewhere here. Please do check it out. And that'll explain more about the programming and how the wire-free ESP system from DCC Concepts works, which is completely useless to me because the box that needs to control the mimic panel is sitting right next to the controller. So its wireless operation is less than 10 centimeters. So probably not the best, but as we discover, this is the solution to complete the project I started with. So we're going to pick up now. We've understood how to program all of our little boards up and what they have to do. Now we need to take all of these bits of pieces, make up the panel, get some holes drilled for the LEDs, and put it all together and see what we've got in the final project. So that's where we're going to pick up today. Let's dive on in and have a look at some hilarious consequences with a true fruit salad of results. And once again, we kick it off in true style, since I've accidentally deleted a bunch of files, up to and including where we went to the shed with the drill press to make the necessary holes for this mimic panel in the perspex, to which my drill head fell off, and it was hilariously funny what had happened. Well, needless to say, it was a disaster. Plenty of cracks that happened, and if it wasn't for that sheet of digitally printed vinyl, this entire mimic panel probably wouldn't be staying together. We make sure we've got our holes drilled, and of course we're taking our switches, making sure they're in the right orientation, and we're using just a drop of Gorilla Glue to fasten them into place. We now just take our bezels and glue them into place. So really quickly here, the investment in this equipment is truly just getting out of control now, but we've come this far. I just wanted to stop there. As you noticed in the time lapse, basically we have now put in our bezels or ferrules or whatever you want to call them, just there, and a couple of fillers that are just the bicolor LEDs. Now I introduce you to the master plan that I've been working with, and I just wanted to point out regarding the connections that we have to do once the switches actually go in, while it's printed on them, what needs to go on one side, which is LED, and the other side is ESP. Once these go in, I won't know what is what. So just to make life a little bit easier, that's basically what I'm up to here, is to basically do a semi pre-wire to them, and I'll at least just take the ESP one off. And of course, these then get screw locked down onto a terminal. Now you may have noticed that what I've done to all of them is I've just made one side black just with the marker, so I know where I'm putting the black wire. Does that matter? Absolutely not. What does matter though is the number of what these are going to match up with. So this is point number 1, which of course we have our marking here. So we're just going to put a 1 on it. That way, when all this is done and these are dangling down, there'll be 12 of these, and I'll know exactly where to plug each one. We now just take a bit of dressed pine that we're going to use a bit of Rust-Oleum matte white spray paint. We cut it into a few various lengths, and once again we spray some water and we use some clear Gorilla Glue and clamp down, and this will sit everything up nicely in the drawer and give us good clearance. Again, this gluing method, I am not recommending this whatsoever. Clamped in the appropriate 24-hour time frames to dry each corner. And what are we up to here? Well, we're going to need to create a little bit of a sub-timber frame to screw all these boards and mimic panels onto. So literally just a bit of wood glue and some scrap bits of balsa wood should give us what we need. We now just take a few rudimentary measurements on that little piece of timber and see how the heck we're going to make all of this stuff fit. In fact, I had to build this in a bit of a double-decker style because while I can fit all of these units on, we still need to get the mimic panels on. Progress report, we finally got them all right, and it's temporarily just been screwed down on this. We'll go into more details as we finish up, but I just wanted to share with you they're all now plugged in and working accordingly. And now we're just going through making sure that the LEDs for the feedback, which need an additional mimic panel, which will need an additional mimic panel for that because of some follow-ups, but we're just checking that the routes are all in the right color. So that's the process. We're now going to jump back because this is a lot of trial and error. Gee, this is one heck of a regret. But here it is. There's no way I would have done any of it this way. Gluing. Oh, I don't want to talk about it. Once again, this isn't quite what I wanted to do, but you'll notice I've just glued a series of magnets down, and again, just some cheap, cheerful washers here for $1. And the whole idea is when we come in and pop the board down, everything sits nicely. And it also has some wiggle room as well on either side, hence why I used big washers. We're also now just going to build a second layer up on that mimic board so it'll all drop together nicely. Well, it's hard to believe we are there. I'm just going to attach a separate piece of reinforcement, and I am tempted to whack a screw in. We'll see what we do there. But here's what we've ended up with, and this is as clean as we can keep it together. So on the, as you can see, I think the magnetic way of doing things works quite well. And the lower layer, of course, is the ESP system to do the points. So as a result, we do have our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, fed by our receiver. And of course, here we are with our communication system. And of course, we've just got power coming in here and here, which I've aggregated onto a loom here, and this will be the master out, which just goes onto the point controller bus that I'm using. So really not complicated there. And of course the second layer, and of course I've bunched those three together as you can sort of make sense of how it works. And yes, I did bust a hole unfortunately in this one, so I've ordered a replacement switch, and that's going to come at well over $100. I certainly know these are about 60 pounds or something like that for a pack of them. I need one. It broke. I tried everything I could to fix it. Doesn't matter. But does it really matter anyway when I've still got the switching system in the drawer anyway? And then the top bit for the mimic panel, which of course we just notched up, and again that just sits magnetically there. And again you can see I've grouped the LEDs 1 to 3, and then of course we've got 4 to 6, 7 to 9, and then of course we've got 10 to 12, and we've linked it over, and we did a second one because we're using a couple of feedback lights. And also just, it's only on the one circuit here. There's actually connected to the reversing loop, and that's only because the way the switch actually works, I want it to give me a dual readout based on the action of it, because it is two separate points that have been sharing the same channel but are on a reversed system. And that's why we do what we do. So really it seems like a lot of overkill, and I think it does. And of course the bottom layer is magnetic as well, because we're going to have to slide all of this out to replace that switch. Probably. It's not too bad. I can do it without it, but it's designed so we can do this. Also, you'll notice this spot is empty because this is where one of these LED panels from DCC Concepts I wanted to cut out and mount. So I put an order in. These were only about 12 pounds, I believe. I put the order in October or November 2023, and the latest update I received in early 2024 is that these are being retooled, and you may well be seeing them sometime in 2025. So that's all we can do. I'd love to do this again, and I'd do it on a different thing, timber board or something like that. But the other thing is I can actually sub-illuminate the board as well underneath. See what happens. Let's get that last bit on, and away we go. So the ability for it to be wireless is pretty much useless in the fact that it's right here and the wireless is less than 10 centimeters apart. But here we are. We've always got our legacy controller, which we're going to do a little bit more with that later on. I do want to clean something up here because I'm not really a big fan of how we have this current receiver over here. And I think we could do a bit of an additional switch or something. Again, the section here where we're waiting on that additional LED display from DCC Concepts, and who knows what they're retooling that with. We'll leave that section open for the minute, but certainly as we just drop down here to the rest of the panel, you'll see it's pretty logical. I've got the two key sections broken up, noodle knocker junction for its situation down there, and then the rest of the main layout here where we can clearly identify as we have the station that's sitting there, and of course we do have our canal over here working over to the petroleum depot. Just remember, these ones that seem just a little bit brighter, that's because those red and green lights as featured here and also here and here are just additional ones because this is where we've taken 2 points and they're sharing the same channel. So as I push the button, because it seems like a waste to have two separate buttons here, because you're either going to be crossing over or going straight through. So hence why we've created a nice simple option where here's your crossover, or vice versa, you'd be going straight through. And I think you can clearly hear there are 2 points flicking over there at the moment, but quite happy. And again, we also have a quick representation of the numbers. So if you said, oh, it's this one down here, number 11, then of course we can come straight here to 12, 11, and we're controlling the same thing. The downside is as we make the movement, this isn't replicated on the board from that, which is, you know, maybe something we'll see with some firmware or something that happens in the future. It really doesn't matter. This is really the focus at the moment, and this will just be a legacy thing if we need it. To all you smart people saying, well, why don't you take a controller or this module and leave it over next to Noodle Knocker Junction? It's really not that big, and 3 steps to the other side of the room won't hurt me. All in all, I'm quite happy with how this has come up. It does fit in that drawer really nicely there. We've done our measurements to make sure everything is smooth. And at the moment, we've got a mimic panel, and I couldn't be happier with what we can see in this picture. And for those of you with a keen eye, you will notice down the bottom here is what I actually had the file saved as, Josef Model Railway Established 2020. I thought it was just a nice thing because while this has been in the planning for years, the actual construction of the layout in this room itself was started in 2020. Of course, timing in commemorating the wonderful Hornby 100th anniversary. And that was the symbolism of why we have what we have here, including why the cabinet work is in this wonderful Hornby red here. So all in all, I think this system is quite good. You can see on this closer up shot here why this board seems just ridiculous there, but I still need to access this button, so there's not much I can do any further from there. And this drawer isn't too bad. There's really no more, I mean, these wouldn't be here. I've got our Hornby Bluetooth dongle to control the layout from the phone. Really, there's not any more I want in the drawer anyway. So I'm rather happy with how this entire project has turned out. And while it's not perfect, and I've made a whoopsie on the button number 12 on the lower one here, which the new switch has just actually arrived today. I haven't had a chance to put it in. It doesn't matter, because if I just push the one that is working, our points are going to change. And if I push it again, they'll change again. So, which brings me back to my original plan. I could have got away with just one single button. And the whole point came back to the original panel, where as long as you see all these lights green, it means that we have mainline operation. And that's exactly what I would have seen. Literally, it wouldn't have mattered. I still would have used the additional LED mimics like you see here, and there would have been a single switch as necessary. So you'd see exactly what you're seeing here, albeit a switch. And if the switch was red and this was green, I know that the red on the actual line itself where it splits means that that's the alternative route. But here we are. Very happy. And I did leave the section empty over here. I don't know, for your papers or your phone or something else you might need to sit there. There's no such thing as too much spare bench space for something, and I think that worked out really, really well. Now let us try and split the screen up if we can and give you a bit of a demonstration, both as I'm pushing and what you're going to be seeing on another camera at the other end. Start at Noodle Knocker Junction now, and what's great about this is we actually have a signal wired in for those coming up from the fiddle yard, whether they can go or not. So we'll push the button. So that allows the fiddle yard to now pass through and also cross over onto the secondary line. Let's return it. And one more time, because I know you're having far too much fun watching that. And if we just move further up the line now to Noodle Knocker Junction and we push the button, we've got our crossover. And if we push it again, we have our straight through operation as necessary. Let's just take a real quick wander up to the other half of the board for a couple of little trickies here. We'll just use number 11 now, just because we have a couple of ground signals, and we'll also have the shot in here. So we'll just change over. And the only other one, which we're going to cover in the ground signals later anyway, is the ground signals that you're seeing are from DCC Concepts, and it's just an actual mimic panel that you've seen underneath here that's just wired to them. And it's a great kit, and I highly advise anyone who's going down this path to pick some of them up, and they come in different variations. Other than just over here, there is one here that when we do change to head over to the petroleum depot, and again 2 points, that's why it changes, so it's set to receive. That's how this has ended up. Those two may be around the wrong way. And here's a great example of the practicality of the panel, that it just lifts up. And the reason I'm lifting it up is, of course, number 7 mimics are around the wrong way. Yes, see, we all make a mistake every now and then, and I just had that lead around the wrong way. And that's, I guess, the great thing about the setup, is that's nice and quick and easy to correct if or should something go wrong. And everything is right in the world once again. And just to prove that point one more time, we'll take the route in. And of course we could change number 8 as well. We won't worry about seeing footage of that. And we come back over, and it seems appropriate for that mix, hence why we have joined them up. And ladies and gentlemen, it really is that simple. You'll notice there's also a green light as well that isn't wired to the mimic panel. This goes straight down to the point motor, which is it's just a green red ground signal, a dwarf signal, just to say whether or not it is clear for the actual loco to return back to the main line, which I don't think is a bad thing at all. Well, girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, it's hard to believe after 2 epic videos, here we are, and we've made it to the end. Special big shout out to Peter and Mick from DCC Concepts. John as well as another name that rattles around in that list as well. There was a lot of emails going back and forth from the team to a point where I thought I had truly given up, but their support is second to none. Really, they've come through with the goods. I've got the solution. Maybe not quite in the cost I wanted to spend, and not really how I wanted to do. I think if I would have overlaid that on some sort of a card, so be it. But I guess the thing we don't see in this video, and perhaps we'll see later on, was my idea about doing it in that sort of perspex material is I could then take some different types of LEDs and back illuminate the panel, sort of like a dashboard on a car. I think that would look quite interesting. Anyway, we're going to have a bit of a noodle around with that maybe later on in the track. In the meantime, we've got pedestrian signals we're going to see in the upcoming videos. We've got to talk about ground signals, the station. Ladies and gentlemen, I still don't have a name for the station. That's why I haven't really talked about it as yet, although you may have seen little glimpses of it in some earlier videos. So it is there, and it is for the most part complete, but I don't have a name. Some tremendous content still on its way through. As always, thank you so much for joining me. I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. Stay safe. Toodles!